very normal. I always tell everybody, you know, the first week back home, we're breaking all these habits that he has that are really strongly ingrained. And not only habits, but associations he has, the house, you guys, stuff like that. And that's challenging. You know, even look at it from a human standpoint, right? Change is hard. So all I ask for initially is not that his emotional state of mind is perfect just yet, but that he controls himself. And as he learns to control himself, we'll see those associations then change from there. That was pretty good. I mean, usually when I come to somebody's house for the first time, my assessment is like, how do they do when I knock on the door? And that was pretty good. This, again, this looks great. You said this is better than usual because you've been on it a little bit more. So that's awesome. I mean, this is a really, really good way to handle having people come over the house. Now, how about just general reactivity in the house towards things going on outside? That was a big thing we talked about last time, I know.
Like, Elle stays home more of the time with him, but like as far as I can tell, like even when I'm coming home, like they'll rush the door.
Yep.
Like normally.
Sure.
Now it's just like they'll still come to the door, but they're not like
as wound up.
Yeah, yelling or anything like that.
Totally fine. Which is normal. I mean, listen, like if like my wife is home and I get home from work, like the dogs run to the door when I get there. You know what I mean? Like they're still dogs. I just want them to be able to contain it if I need them to, obviously, and for it not to be this like totally uncontrollable level.
Yeah,
so that's fine.
Like so now at bedtime, like after their last going out and everything, like we take the collars off, and then like, you know, if there is a late night walker and stuff, like they still might like get a little bit of a sudden burst, but then our nose immediately just draws them back in.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, it sounds like we're moving in the right direction, obviously. So, and have you been walking them, did you say?
Yeah.
And you said you've been walking them individually?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'll focus on walking together today a little bit. All right, so we're gonna start cruising here. So the biggest thing with walking two dogs, I always tell everybody, is don't overthink it too much or confuse yourself with looking at them like really individually with stuff, right? So when I'm walking or working with two dogs, I treat everything like a unit. So I give one command initially to signify I want them to be with me. At that point, I'm just gonna enforce it all the same. So we're walking here. If one of them gets out of position, I'll simply mark with no, give a correction, then repeat that command again, and kind of plug away that way, so. And all this stuff, we're just looking to make this habit, right? So obviously right now we could say hypothetically, well, they're not reacting because they have the e-collar on or they don't want to get corrected or whatever, which is true to an extent. But as we continue to do this and make this just the routine we implement, no, come. And we don't need to use as many corrections on the walk and stuff. They just get comfortable and this is just what we do. This is how we walk, you know? Now, as far as the stopping, sniffing, peeing, all that, I'll usually give them one freebie with it if they're in position. And then after that, I'll usually correct if they do try to pull off. And then you guys can determine where you want to let them go to sniff, right? Okay. It's not that they can't sniff on the walk or we're anti that or anything like that. We just have to determine where we're letting them. Because we don't want them learning that they can determine when they want to no longer be in that heel position or the come command or anything. And usually with my dogs, if I'm gonna go for a long walk with them, I'll let them go before I start the walk. That way I kind of know you're good, you know? And then I can give them a break somewhere in the middle and feel comfortable that if I do correct them for stopping to sniff or something at the beginning of the walk, you already went. Like, it's not like you have to go and I'm like restricting your ability to. Looks really good. I mean, like I said, I'm impressed with how everything looks. I think that you guys have, you know, really got it together this week with them and, you know, doing what you need to do, obviously. So, from a training standpoint, you just got to keep maintaining all of this at this point, right? You need to make these routines, whether it's when people are coming over using the bed or the couch or whatever, correcting for any reactivity out the fence, doing your walking in that way, stuff like that. You need to just make that your routines that you just do. Right? And as long as you do that, there would be no reason why any of this would start to regress, right? I would say training isn't so much about you needing to do all of these extra things. It's just about changing some of the things you're already doing, right? You're gonna have them out when people come over. It's just a matter of when we have people come over, do we make sure the collar is on and we put them in a bed when they come in? We're gonna walk them. Do we make sure when we're on our walk, we're enforcing our come command, et cetera, right? So that looks really great. What we'll do from this standpoint is I'm gonna give you guys a call next week, just make sure everything is still going well. Okay. And then assuming everything is going well, let it ride. If you run into any issues, let me know, obviously. If you're having any issues with anything, we do another session, obviously.
At this stage, we're just trying to get him to stay in the command a little bit longer through adding in the e-collar, and then the e-collar goes away when his butt hits the ground, kind of teaching him what the mistake is, kind of really slowly there, rather than like turning it up to a significant level and correcting him for not doing it. I want to go really slow with the e-collar so he has a deep understanding of it, and take our time teaching it so he has no doubt in his mind what he's supposed to be doing. And the goal of the week would just be like being able to kind of orbit him and create some movement within our sit, like we were doing here. Sometimes to ease them into starting to move, I won't go, it's a little hard for him as we're crossing behind him, I noticed. So I'll generally like take 2 steps out of his bubble, start with just the 2 steps, and go back into his space. Good. Reward, okay, and release, rather than kind of starting to create distance and releasing him from a distance. Sit. So I would never try to release him from over here. I always want to go back. Good. And as he's starting to create success with that, I can slowly add orbiting him back in, okay? I want to take the steps to make him as successful as possible and have him feel confident in what I'm asking him to do. Sit. Good. If I feel like every single rep he is getting up and popping up, I might want to make it a little easier for him until we can help him understand what we want. Good. Sit. Good. Good. Oops, sorry, bud. Okay, so last week during our walk, I know we did a little bit of tap and turn, or sorry, just turning in our prong collar work. This week we're just gonna add e-collar into that. So on the walks, I'm just gonna press the button once rather than press and hold. I'm gonna start walking him in here and I'm gonna make a turn. If he doesn't turn with me, I'm tapping him on the e-collar and getting him to come with me.
Just on the setting you have it on now?
Yeah, I'm not pressing and holding. That's the only difference. Okay? Come. So I'm gonna start turning. I don't really have a high expectation of where he is positionally, as long as he's kind of focused on when I'm turning. Good. Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Okay. So all I'm doing is just trying to keep his focus on me. So it becomes less about, like last week we were doing a lot of like pressure and release. He was in pressured to be in our space and release when he was in the right space. This is kind of similar where we're just starting to alert him when he's losing focus in us, okay? Come on, bud. He's, like you said, he's super focused inside. He doesn't really have a huge issue with that. So let's say we were walking and another dog was approaching. I'm gonna be cognizant of the other dog and I'm gonna kind of come to a stop and do a turn. If he's locked on to that dog, I'm gonna give him a correction and walk the opposite way to gain his focus. And that kind of takes care of him just kind of building the blocks of our heel and takes care of the reactions he's having toward other dogs. Where no matter if there's another dog, I'm still expecting him to turn with me and be focused on me. So I'm trying to get him to turn with me a bit. Obviously he locked onto those dogs. I don't really change anything that I'm doing. Good. Besides still implementing the corrections if he doesn't turn with me. So our criteria is still the same. It's just being held to a little bit of more distracting criteria.
When you said to get like press it at level 15 for like a correction for barking,
Yeah.
This is different from that?
Yes.
Because of the prong collar?
Yeah, so I'm at 26. I went up to 26 and you could see I tried 10, not a lot of response. I went up, his focus is still really locked on that dog. I continued to turn until I found a level I thought he was more responsive to, which ended up being a 26. Could be higher, could be lower when you go to do this at home. I'm looking for him to turn with us. I'm looking for that criteria to be the same as we were doing inside when we first started the tap and turn. Nothing too fancy at this stage. We'll kind of clean it up as we go along.
I get it. Like,
yeah.
Have an associate.
Yeah. So now the distraction is gone. He's kind of fully turning with me. Good. Okay. Sit. Good. So for sitting, just to reiterate, press and hold as we're trying to create distance from him. Start with just your 2 steps and go back into his space. Okay. To release him. For walking, you're going to do a single tap. So we're going to tap and turn, make a lot of turning, go up in your levels to see what he's responsive to. I'm looking for him to feel it. You can generally see that through a twitch in the neck or the ears moving slightly. What I don't want is him yelping or screaming. So we can start to, this week, work on the barking, add the e-collar in minimal ways. A little sassy thing, huh? I know. We start with a little bit of fun, huh? Yeah. So I'm going to do a couple commands without her leash, just trying to transition her from needing that leash to go onto the bed or the leash to go into a sit with just understanding what it means. Drop the leash. Bed. Good. So at your house you were saying, particularly, would she keep breaking the bed when she was getting distracted, or do you feel like she had a hard time understanding to get onto the bed in the first place?
Without the leash?
Yes, yeah, without the leash.
Like the command wasn't transitioning from having her
Sure.
to, because she goes very easily with the leash. But if you say Luna bed, she's
Good.
not just
Yeah.
not there yet.
Okay.
That's it. But like if
Okay.
you say Luna sit, she sits.
Yes. Come on. Bed. Good. So I'll kind of slowly add a little bit less and less help of physically guiding her over and starting to see if she can put 2 and 2 together and start to make her own way over it. Okay? Good. So a couple things I'm doing is just having her start to move away from me a little bit to go to the bed rather than feeling like I need to stand right by it. Starting to see how well she understands it without our extra motion. Bed. Good. And as we transition in this house, when she's battling like guests and her favorite people, I would get her to the goal where we can send her to her bed, but in those scenarios where things are a little bit more hectic, I want to make the picture crystal clear to her. So as I was attempting to start with, is just standing by the bed and having her go to it. So if we have a house full of people, we go plant by her bed. If we'd like her to do that, say bed. And my idea is that I'd like her to come over to the bed right away, instead of like having her try to be like, do you want me to sit? Do you want me to perform for everybody? Come on. Luna, bed. Good. Okay? Come on. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Hi. You doing a good job? Bed. Good. Okay. Oops. Come on. Come on. Good girl. Bed. Good. Okay. So I'm trying to give in a little bit less to like the hesitancy of coming off the bed by just giving her a little bit more direction. Bed. Good. And slightly making the criteria a little bit easier for her by standing just a little bit closer, still not going right up and having to physically lead her, but creating a clearer picture to her by giving it maybe 2 feet away until she gets really smooth at it. And then that 2 feet, maybe I'll do 3 feet. And then the length of her leash to help her really understand what I'm asking her. Because I think she's getting a little tripped up sometimes and she's like, do you want me to sit? What do you want from me? Good. Yeah. Okay.
You said last week that the criteria was all 4 paws on the bed.
Mm-hmm.
Our bed is not as, like, it's not as high. It's just a one of a cushion bed.
Good.
So when she lies down, like if one of her paws fall off just because of the leash cushioning, is that okay?
Yeah. For the plush beds, it can make things like slightly less clear for both us and the dogs. So the reason we use the raised bed in the training is because it creates a really clear boundary between ground and bed. So you can use any bed and you can kind of trust your gut with that. If you feel like she's mostly committed to staying on, I don't really care if a paw falls off. I don't want to be so strict that she has to have everything on. But I can start doing things like she only gets the reward when all paws are firmly onto the bed. So we're kind of shaping it a little bit. Yeah.
Luna, bed.
I'm confident that she knows what we're asking her. She's just trying to figure out that it looks a little different between that room and then outside. And then last week we did in the lobby, which she nailed everything last week. It was a really motivating session for her.
Yeah, I felt so pumped up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the most part, we should feel like our training is moving in the right direction. But every now and then you'll have sessions with her where they're not like 100% amazing, and that's okay too. Dogs need to be able to make a little bit of mistakes as well and grow from that. And we can work toward building her confidence in that aspect of she's starting to become really confident in what we're asking her to do. And with that, you'll see a little bit of the apprehension kind of fade away.
Puppy has a really happy brain.
I know, doesn't he?
Okay. Luna, bed.
There you go. We got some pep in our step now.
Oh, what, did you just need to see somebody or what?
So this week I continue to work on getting her to move toward the bed. On leash, start to make the criteria super simple where we start by standing right next to the bed, getting her to go on, but trying not to guide her physically with the leash. You could still use your no marker. Use a lot of food, keep it pretty positive and light. My goal would be for her to look like she's more confident because she's doing the things, but she's not completely confident in what she's doing. You know what I mean?
Is it something, did I do something wrong this week?
I don't think so. I think it probably is just a combination of, like when we started, we did a lot of the agility. So we did a lot of moving around, and I don't think it's anything that you did wrong, but now we're highlighting the specific issue, which is just her feeling like moving pretty slowly. And that's not wrong. She's still doing them. I just want to see her a little bit more happy and pep in her step while she's doing it.
Yeah.
Like last week, she just was so nailed it. She was so confident, but I think we offered a lot of help last week. So as we were backing down from the help, she may have been like, wait, what? So it's good for her to learn that she doesn't need to rely on us so much.
Okay.
But at first, make her a little bit uncertain. It's not fearfulness that I'm seeing, and it's not her being shut down. It's just uncertainty. I want to hear good things about you this week, okay? Hi guys, we just finished up that session with Luna. And Luna is a very motivated dog. In previous sessions, she nailed everything that we've been teaching her. She's had a great progression throughout the last 3 weeks. Today we were noticing just a little bit of nervousness or shyness in the lesson. Not generally how I'm used to seeing her. So we worked on beds particularly. And the owner asked me, because we've seen a shift in her behavior, asked, did she do anything wrong over the last week? And I told her no. In training, it's fairly normal to hit hiccups every now and then. We shouldn't have a routine occurrence of the dog feeling a lack of motivation or nervous in our sessions. But every now and then we'll run into certain situations. For whatever reason, Luna was a little nervous today. We weren't using high levels, and I thought we were being pretty motivating with the treats. So particularly in this session, we were working on sending to the bed because her mom had mentioned in the house she had a really hard time getting on and off of the bed, which we certainly saw. So we sent mom home with the homework of getting Luna to go on and off of the bed really confidently, using a lot of food, and help simplify the criteria just a bit by not using leash direction because we're past that stage. We don't want to go backwards, but simplifying the criteria in the sense of our proximity to the bed when we give the command. When we run into hiccups with our dogs, it can be a little bit discouraging for us, but we can look at the whole situation. How did the session go, and is there any adjustments that the handler or the trainer can make to make it a little bit easier on the dog while still advancing their skills and training? It's inevitable that you'll run into a little bit of a hiccup, but stay strong and keep working with your dog. If you don't see improvement, we might have to adjust a little bit more and just take it slow and work your dog through it.
What's up, guys? It's Paige behind the camera. We've got Ernie holding an awesome bed stay. We've got distractions. We've got Bridget over there. We've got David building a shelf. And there you have it.
So this is Sandy.
And you are?
David, nice to meet you.
David, nice to meet you.
Hello, Sandy. So what's going on with Sandy?
Well, I rescued her about in August, and
Oh, you just got her.
kind of.
Yeah.
I think she has really deep herding instincts.
Sure.
I've had like 5 shelties before. And
Yeah.
None have been like her. Go for a walk, and if she sees somebody 5 doors down, she is lunging and barking.
Sure.
And I think she wants to hurt them. When I have people come to my house and when they leave, she gets nuts.
Try to nip at the ankles and stuff, or?
She does it to me, but I think she thinks somebody's leaving the herd.
Sure.
And that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Oh, yeah.
So that's my big issue.
Okay. Anything else major to note?
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be able to take her on a walk.
Yeah.
And go nuts.
And when you say like she goes nuts, is it just a lot of like pulling, barking, lunging, stuff like that, or?
Barking and lunging.
Yeah.
She's never bit anybody.
Sure.
She's bit me.
Does she do it to primarily people or dogs or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Sandy. Come here.
And what about in the house? So you said when people leave, she gets a little fired up.
Oh, yeah.
What does that usually look like?
Same thing, barking incessantly.
Yeah. Have you had her around other dogs very much, like socializing, or no?
Well, I took her to my vet for doggy daycare.
Yeah.
Like about 4 times.
How'd she do?
She didn't bark. She just kind of stayed on the periphery and kind
Sure.
of, I don't know if she was trying to hurt everybody, but
But nothing aggressive towards them or anything?
no.
Okay, good. Cool. Sandy, you're gonna have so much fun here. Yeah, so every day they get a good mix of everything. So we're doing walking with them every day. We're doing socialization with other dogs every day they're here. She's going to get multiple training sessions throughout the day, obviously. And from a day-to-day standpoint, it really varies as far as how much of which one we do. It just depends on kind of where we're at in the program, you know. Obviously, when they're in the early stages of teaching the walking, we're going to be emphasizing a lot of those types of things. Once that looks good, obviously she'll go on her walks every day, but we'll be emphasizing the commands inside and just kind of flip-flopping back and forth between things.
I know you said that you provided Ecollar. Do you put that on right away, or do you wait a while?
Generally, the first week is going to be like leash and some motivation and things like that, you know, and then we'll kind of phase into it as we think she needs it. So, yeah, we try to let them kind of get in the swing of things first. Well, do you have any questions for me that I can answer for you about anything?
Not right now.
Just excited to get to work.
Are you going to be the trainer?
I will be working with her alongside another girl, Senny.
Okay.
So I'll be doing like your lesson with you and everything, like when you come and pick her up, and I'll be your point of contact. But her and I split the work as far as what we get done with her.
She's smart.
Yeah.
I taught her, she could be sitting down.
Sure.
Staying pretty well. That's without distractions.
Is she pretty treat motivated?
Fairly.
Just a little bit?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
She looks excited to go.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, let me at him. Let me at him. Good. Well, like I said, it should be a pretty straightforward process, you know, and then I think they got you scheduled for your send home lesson already, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. So you'll be here for about 3 hours.
Yeah.
We'll get into all the training and stuff, and then post that, we'll do some follow-up classes. You know, I always tell everybody the board and train, you know, it's by no means like the quick fix from the standpoint of like it's like send home lesson and everything is perfect and great. The send home lesson is the start of you learning how to use the training, you know. So we'll get you all the ins and outs of stuff, teach you how to give commands and force commands. Then basically you'll go home for a week, implement it, see how it goes. Some things will go really well, other things you may have issues with, and then from there we'll get you in for those follow-up classes to work through any kinks that there may be from there. So I usually warn everybody, and this is Senny, she's going to be also doing some of the training. So but yeah, generally speaking, I always tell everybody, like anything that she used to do before coming to training, she's going to try to do again once she comes home, because naturally she has associations with doing those things with you, doing those things in the house, around the environment, stuff like that. But you'll have the communication established where you can communicate with her when you like those things or don't like those things. So that's generally how the program works and stuff.
I'm willing to give it a try.
Oh, we'll get you there. I'm sure we'll get you. You know, most of the things that you've described, like I said, none of it is too major, you know. Vocalization, barking, herding, normal traits, and it's not that those things are inherently always bad, but it's like we got to teach a time and a place for it, you know. Like when we're giving her that outlet and letting her burn off some steam, that's fine. But yeah, when we're having guests come over or we're going for a walk and stuff, that's where we need her to tone it back a little bit.
That's for sure.
She seems friendly though. She's curious. Like it's not like she's all like wigged out or anything being here, which is good.
Have fun, kiddo. You'll be a new dog in a few weeks.
That's right.
I hope.
That's right.
I have faith in y'all.
Don't embarrass me. He's extra fluffed up. He just got a bath today. So basically how we're going to structure today out is we're going to just go over all of the basics of giving commands, enforcing commands, all that. Given the fact that you guys have done some training before with him, a lot of this is going to be reiterating certain things you've probably already known. But just giving you some ideas as far as how to implement some structure for this first week with him to get him reacclimated and pick a couple of like really key things for you to focus on over the next like 7 days or so. And then we'll get you guys back in next week for a follow-up session and see how he's doing, add some stuff to it. So what we're gonna do to start, here bud, is I'm just gonna work a couple of bed stays. So just getting him situated into command, just having him hold that for a little bit. And we're gonna be using, again, the Ecollar to enforce. So I'm gonna walk up, give him that command, Ernie, bed. And the expectation of bed is simply have 4 paws on the bed. So as long as he's got 4 paws on, it's fine. He doesn't have to sit or down or anything. And if for whatever reason he doesn't do it, or if he were to break command right now, I would mark with no, give a tap on the E-collar, and then take him back to position. Really straightforward. I was like setting up this new shelf we got earlier, and I had him probably hold this for like an hour while I was doing it. You'll notice, obviously, we're not using a stay command or anything like that. Stay is built into all of our positions. So once I tell him bed or down or sit or anything like that, it's expected that he maintains command until he's told otherwise. So, and whenever I want to release him, I'll go back, I'll grab the leash. And then I like to pick it up, pause for a couple seconds, make sure that he's not seeing that as the cue to get up. From there, once he's holding it nice and stable, okay. I'll tell him okay, letting him know that he can get out of position. And then you can go ahead and drop your leash and leave him there. Now obviously he got on relatively quickly, which is great. Let's say you said that bed command and he didn't get on right away. I always say let the command breathe for a minute, give him a chance to process that information and see what it is that he's gonna do. If at that point he's committed to not doing it, again, calmly mark with no, we'll give our correction, and then help him on with the leash.
Okay. Do you not repeat the command then?
We don't repeat a command unless we're gonna give him adequate information letting him know he did it incorrect first. Okay. So I wouldn't go bed, and then if he didn't do it, bed again. I would go bed, and then if he didn't do it, I would identify that mistake, give a little correction for that, then repeat that command again. If not, if we repeat that command, essentially what we're telling him is sometimes the command is bed, sometimes the command is bed, bed, sometimes the command is bed, 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 right? And you could find yourself in just like that vicious cycle like that. And again, now we see he's starting to settle down a little bit more again, but once your wife gets in, we'll see him get right back up to the amped upness, and we gotta see that continue to balance each other out. It's very normal. I always tell everybody, you know, the first week back home, we're breaking all these habits that he has that are really strongly ingrained. And not only habits, but associations he has. The house, you guys, stuff like that. And that's challenging. You know, even look at it from a human standpoint, right? Change is hard. So all I ask for initially is not that his emotional state of mind is perfect just yet, but that he controls himself. And as he learns to control himself, we'll see those associations then change from there. He's a dog that definitely needs to be able to burn off a little more physical stimulation, you know? Things like playing ball with him or letting him run and play with other dogs and stuff is very, very important.
The walks are there, that's why the big thing that we're trying to work on is the doggy daycare.
Yeah.
Which that was tough. Because
Sure.
I think for him, he just wasn't getting the social cues of other dogs.
Yeah.
He just has so much energy.
Well,
So that was the issue.
Yeah.
We were with one dog daycare for a little bit, and then finally we were like, it was too much, and then we did
Yeah.
2 other trials that just didn't pan out.
Daycare is very similar to like vets and groomers like I talked about, where a lot of the dog's success is going to be predicated on how knowledgeable that individual is that's supervising the groups. And if you really look at a lot of your standard daycare, so like your Pet Palaces and like the bigger box place, Camp Bow Wows, things like that, unfortunately, it's kind of just a free-for-all for dogs. You know what I mean? And if you got a young, rambunctious dog, even though he may not be doing anything necessarily wrong, that environment is gonna make his behavior seem 10 times worse than it actually is, right? So to give you an example, right? Like when he came here, right off the rip, he was fine with the other dogs, right? We were able to socialize him, but that's because it's not the format like a lot of those places are, where it's like 50 dogs out for 12 hours a day where they can't escape it and it's constant overstimulation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's we're gonna socialize you for an hour and a half, then give you a little bit of a break, right? We're gonna supervise the group where if he's not picking up on another dog's cues, we know how to advocate appropriately for that. Meaning you're pushing this dog that's in the corner that's had too much and that dog's giving you a little bit of attitude to get you to go away and you're not backing off, so I would step in and intervene and correct for that. And unfortunately, it's not one of those things where you just teach him how to do that and then he does it. It's a constant game of us keeping him successful with it. You know what I mean? So we see that very often with like other daycares where, you know, unfortunately, even again, let's say you were to go back there tomorrow, they'd probably still give you the same feedback because they're not changing what they're doing. It's no different than he goes home from this board and train. Let's say you do nothing we instruct you to do. He's gonna seem like he's never had training before in his life because training is a communication system. A couple things I usually recommend for people is, again, finding the right daycare for it is important. And then additionally, take some of those matters into your own hands and maybe find a friend or two that has a dog that you know and trust and set up play dates on your own where you guys are gonna be able to supervise it and advocate for him and let him burn off that energy. And then additionally, you know, figure out other ways to burn off physical and mental stimulation because a lot of it is not just the physical side of things, it's the mental side of things, right? Which training and, you know, pushing his commands in places that are challenging for him to do so and stuff like that, you're gonna find he's gonna be really tired from. And a good example is gonna be, you're gonna see for the next like 48 hours back home, he's probably gonna be the most tired you've you've ever seen him in your life, because he's had 4 weeks of nonstop mental stimulation, right? So a lot of those things could definitely play a big role in that also. Yeah, the daycare thing, we hear more often than you think. It's interesting. Right before you got here, I was sending home a daycare client of ours that recently moved out to the east side, so it's a little bit more inconvenient for them to come here. And they had a similar experience. This is a highly social dog, very well trained. You know, used to come here, I think like twice a week for daycare before they moved. And they tried to go to a different daycare that was out to them. And first day they said, oh, this dog isn't a good fit for us. But we know the dog is fine. We know he socializes great, which is where you get into, that's no longer a dog issue, right? That's an environment issue. Sure.
What's the purpose? Because there's always a potential risk.
Work at your comfort level with that kind of stuff. It depends on where you're at, right? So I used to live in a fairly, you know, suburban, quiet neighborhood, and I would walk my dogs off leash through the neighborhood because there wasn't a whole ton of risk or anything. And, you know, they're very reliable at this point with their commands. I trust my timing if they were to not listen to me, et cetera, et cetera. Now we live on a fairly busy road, so we walk them all on leashes unless we're in an area where we're away from all the traffic and stuff. Additionally, I factor in what's going on around me. Is there a ton of people? Is there a ton of dogs? Stuff like that. And if there is, I don't do it. Off-leash training, right? The ability to let the dog run and be free and stuff. It's one of the best gifts we could give our dog, obviously. You just have to be responsible about it, right? You don't want to be that person that's, you know, when I go to the park with my dogs where they have their dog off leash and are letting their dog run up to every person and dog they see and all that, because it's, you know, obviously not very respectful of the other people's dogs at that point, right? So you just got to be mindful of where you're at and how much you trust your ability to communicate with your dog. Because it's not a matter of like, is he going to try to run after something? It's a matter of when he does, and we need to be prepared to address that, right? Generally, if I'm going to be walking my dogs on a leash, I'm going to put a regular leash on them. Because I'm, you know, if I do want to give them some freedom or something, I'm going to wait until I'm in an open area where I can let them off leash. You know what I mean? The retractable leashes, it's not that they're bad inherently. The problem is most people that use them just kind of use it to let the dog do whatever they want to do, where the majority of your walk, you should be keeping your dog kind of structured and under control, right? So for right now, at least I would just keep them on a standard leash and then, you know, give them some freedom to sniff around and stuff somewhere in the middle of the walk. Or like I said, if you have an area where you do feel comfortable letting him off of the leash, you can go ahead and do that then at that point. Ernie, come. Just one more time. Again, like we talked about when you dropped him off, this is all going to be contingent on you holding him accountable for this, right? We talked a little bit about how you kind of shied away from using the e-collar sometimes. You're really going to have to maintain the consistency of enforcing those commands. And you see, like right now, we're not needing to correct him that much, right? And that's because he's had 4 weeks of consistency with knowing where that boundary is. So because of that, he could avoid it, right? Where the second those boundaries start becoming inconsistent, where it's like we give them a freebie every now and then, you know, half of the time we walk them and there's no corrections or things like that, that's where it just creates all this confusion again, and you wind up getting right back to where you were when you brought him in, where even though he had the training, he didn't know how to make sense of it, you know?
Let's say we're coming back home and we had a rough day. We all sincerely excited.
Sure, I understand.
How do we, I guess, communicate our own excitement?
Yeah.
In response to it appropriately?
Well, it's not that you can't get excited. That's the biggest thing I tell everybody. This has nothing to do with like we're not allowed to like love our dog or give them attention or cuddle with them or do any of those things that we get dogs to do, right? It has to do with understanding how anything we do is going to have some sort of impact on his state of mind, right? So if we're getting home every single day and every day when we get in, it's like, let's get Ernie as freaking excited as possible because we need to have that outlet, we need to understand that that's going to have consequences, right? And, you know, because obviously he's going to start getting wound up, and he's got to have this association of as soon as you guys get home, get super jacked up, whether you guys are getting him excited or not, which starts turning into then he's jumping and we're getting him mad at that, and it just becomes a mess, right? So we have to be mindful of how our behavior impacts him and understand that if I'm going to do those things, right, I've still got to hold him accountable for the expectation, right? It's no different than if somebody comes over, right? My routine when I have guests come over my house is I situate my dogs into a bed stay, and I generally will have them hold that for about 10 minutes or so before I release them off of it, because I don't want to create this association of as soon as the person walks in, it's the Ernie show, right? Because again, that will come with issues of then I have a hard time getting them back under control, right? Then I have a hard time with getting them to not jump on them, et cetera, right? So I try to set routines that are consistent. So coming home, right? Like my one dog is kind of like Ernie in the sense of like he goes from like 0 to 100 like very, very quickly with things. And one thing I've done with him over the years is I try to force myself, whether I'm really excited to see him or not, to enforce like 5 to 10 minutes of just like no touch, no talk, no eye contact when I get in the door, where it's like I get home, I let him out, I let him go to the bathroom, I get my shoes off, I get my coat off, stuff like that, then I interact with him. Right? And that way I'm breaking some of that cycle right off the rip that's causing a lot of the problems that you guys are seeing, right? And then equally making sure that we're balancing out all of the fun things that we want to do with him and all the excitement and stuff with some of the kind of boring stuff, right? Of the hour of doing a bed stay while we're working from home, right? Or, you know, a down stay while we're in a coffee shop where he's minding his P's and Q's and people are walking by and not giving him attention, right? Or things like that. And the reason why that stuff is going to be important for you to implement now from the standpoint of a lot of the boring stuff is because once a baby comes, he's going to be doing a lot of that, right? And it's difficult for dogs sometimes who can be like the center of their owner's universe. Then you have a baby and it's like that shifts, you know? And we got to prep him for it, because if we, you know, are constantly smothering him with attention 24/7 when he's in the house now, and then when baby comes, it's like a hard turn off then at that point, that's going to make it even more challenging for him to adapt to that. So try to kind of put some thought to like, what are the routines you're going to have once you have the baby, and start training him for those routines now, right?
I'm just thinking like one thing for when we come home, like I think he's primed that when the garage door open, wherever he is, he leaps and like comes to us.
Sure.
It's to the point where like I'll sometimes give like Nicole a call, like when I'm coming home, because like if she's sitting on the couch with him, he's gonna jump and like scratch at her because he's just like.
Yeah. So there's a couple variables that come into play with that. So thing number one to put a little bit of thought to is a lot of people when they're having a baby want to, especially if they have a dog that's as big and rambunctious as he is, they kind of nix the furniture access temporarily, right? Because there's going to be a lot of times you're on the couch with the baby and he can't be all over you like that. So again, one of those things you might want to consider right off the rip is just enforcing that boundary. Another thing is, yeah, like you were saying, the heads up of like, hey, I'm going to be home in 5 minutes, to then use training to combat that issue can be very beneficial. So my wife would do that because my dogs would get really excited when I would get home from work. And same deal, it's not like they were doing anything wrong, but it's like they'd hear, same deal, the garage open or something, and they'd go running over to the garage door, you know, and again, they're not doing anything wrong necessarily, but it's kind of a burst of energy that can be disruptive if she's in the middle of something, right? So she would start putting the dogs into a downstay, and then when I would come in, she would make them hold that downstay, and then same deal, I would do my 5 minutes or so of chill, and then she'd release them, and then the energy level would just go from like a 10 down to like a 4, you know? So again, just routines you could start to implement that could be very beneficial. Yeah. So bed, you know, generally we would use some sort of dog bed for it, right? Or some sort of clear visual place that we want him to be. And yeah, that is kind of his safe spot, right? So, you know, if the dog is hanging out on the bed, I try to not mess with them too much or anything. You'll start noticing he'll kind of gravitate towards it if he needs some space away from somebody or whatever. So yeah, we want to be mindful of that for sure. And then especially again, once baby comes, bed is going to really be the safe spot when you have a child in the house. And that's where, you know, advocation, equal ways, right? We're going to be setting a lot of boundaries with him with the baby, obviously. And we'll get more into this obviously as the baby comes, but we do equal parts where it's like as the kid starts crawling or walking or things like that, if we notice that he needs space and tries to go over there, we set that perimeter around the bed to enforce as well. So.